there has been an unexpected turn in global politics that until recently seemed unlikely. Turkey, which for years balanced between East and West, is now rapidly transforming into an independent and influential player, ready to dictate its own terms even to the world's leading superpowers. This is evidenced by the unprecedented meeting between Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Donald Trump at the White House, which took place immediately after the conclusion of the UN General Assembly session in New York. For Erdogan, it was the first official reception at the White House since 2019, and analysts called the very fact of this meeting a symbol of a new geopolitical reality. According to the Financial Times, it was the American side that initiated the talks. Washington, watching Ankara deepen its strategic cooperation with Moscow and Beijing, decided to make sharp concessions in order to pull Turkey back into the Western orbit. At a press briefing, Trump announced that he was ready to lift restrictions on the delivery of the latest F-35 fighter jets, participation in the program of which Turkey had lost after purchasing Russian S-400 systems. Moreover, he promised that base tariffs for Turkish goods would remain at 10% and would not be raised despite the ongoing trade war with other countries. These steps were made possible thanks to Ankara's carefully constructed policy. According to Der Spiegel, in recent months, Turkish negotiators signed a series of agreements with China to shift to mutual settlements in national currencies, which effectively means abandoning the dollar. At the same time, Ankara accelerated the process of reducing the share of American bonds in its reserves, replacing them with gold and yuan. For Washington, this looked like an alarming signal. Losing Turkey would mean not only a geopolitical, but also a financial blow to the dollar system. Insiders in Brussels, cited by Politico Europe, claim that in the corridors of the NATO summit, many diplomats expressed concern that Turkey had effectively begun to play on multiple fronts at once. On the one hand, it remains a key ally in the alliance, controlling the crucial southern flank. On the other, it increasingly asserts its own interests, sometimes directly contradicting the line of Washington and Brussels. One need only recall energy agreements with Russia, participation in the Turkish Stream project, or Ankara's attempts to strengthen its position in Central Asia through the Organization of Turkic States. Turkish media, particularly Hürriyet Daily News, presented the White House meeting as Erdogan's personal victory. According to their narrative, it was the president's tough and independent policy that made it possible to secure concessions from Trump that just a year ago seemed impossible. Turkey's economy is experiencing a deep crisis. Inflation exceeds 60%, the national currency remains under pressure, and living standards for millions continue to decline. Against this backdrop, America's promise to resume cooperation in military aviation and not strangle Turkey with tariffs is seen in Ankara as a long-awaited breath of fresh air. In Washington, however, the picture looks different. As the Wall Street Journal writes, for Trump this move is a forced measure. The White House understands that if Turkey definitively tilts toward an alliance with China and Russia, it would create a new strategic axis capable of reshaping the balance of power in the Middle East and the Mediterranean. This is why the American administration is ready to turn a blind eye to many of Ankara's actions, from restrictions on freedom of speech to its close ties with the Kremlin. Not everyone in the United States agrees with this approach. Republican senators have already declared that selling F-35s to Turkey could undermine NATO security, given Ankara's track record of cooperation with Moscow. But supporters of the deal counter that the alternative is far worse, Turkey joining the camp of America's adversaries. Meanwhile, Chinese and Russian outlets are portraying the meeting as proof of Turkey's strength. The Global Times writes that Washington had to make concessions only because Ankara demonstrated its readiness to align with the East. The Russian TV channel RT, in turn, emphasizes that Turkey has finally received the recognition it deserves as an independent power, rather than a junior NATO partner. Economists note that Turkey's rejection of the dollar in international settlements could become a model for other countries dissatisfied with US policy. According to Bloomberg, during closed meetings in Ankara, plans are being discussed to expand the use of national currencies with Iran, Azerbaijan, and even India. If these steps are implemented, the role of the dollar across Eurasia will begin to shrink rapidly. According to analysts from Chatham House, we are witnessing the birth of a third force. Turkey no longer wants to be only a member of the West or merely an ally of the East. It seeks to occupy a unique niche as both mediator and arbiter. This is an extremely risky strategy, as even a slight tilt in one direction could trigger catastrophic consequences. Yet it is precisely this independence that makes Turkey such a valuable partner for all. Today's reality is this: a country that not long ago was experiencing severe domestic turmoil is step by step turning into the center of a new geopolitical game. The meeting at the White House only confirmed this. Turkey has received the signal that the United States is not ready to lose it. But the real question is different. Is Turkey itself willing to remain just an ally, now that it has the chance to become one of the global players setting the rules of the game? Nor should one forget the domestic situation in Turkey itself. Opposition parties have already declared that Erdogan is using international agreements to consolidate his personal power, rather than to solve ordinary citizens' problems. As the Turkish outlet Cumhuriyet writes, representatives of the Republican People's Party note that real economic reforms remain only on paper, while millions of Turks continue to face soaring prices and declining incomes. The government showcases foreign policy successes, but in the shops, people see nothing but inflation, opposition representatives say. Still, even Erdogan's critics admit that Turkey's return to the global stage is a fact that cannot be ignored. China and Russia, for their part, are not about to let Turkey slip out of their orbit of influence. According to the South China Morning Post, Beijing views Ankara as a key element of the Belt and Road Initiative. Turkey is a natural bridge between Asia and Europe, and Chinese corporations have already invested billions of dollars in infrastructure projects in Ankara, Istanbul, and Izmir. Russia, meanwhile, continues to expand energy cooperation. The Kremlin is confident that even if relations with the US warm, Erdogan will not abandon his multi-vector policy. Analysts observe that Turkey is becoming a kind of anchor of the new multipolarity. If 10 years ago it was seen as a secondary player within NATO, today we are talking about a state capable of setting the rules of the game in the region from the Black Sea to the Persian Gulf. And most importantly, unlike other countries, Ankara has learned to maximize the contradictions between the United States, China, Russia, and the EU. This art of balancing turns Turkey into a unique negotiator, and its president into a leader whom even the largest powers are forced to heed. The only question is how long this balance can be maintained. Experts from the Brookings Institution note that Erdogan is playing a dangerous game. By simultaneously accepting advantages from Washington, Beijing, and Moscow, he risks finding himself in a situation where a final choice will have to be made. But for now, Turkey is reaping benefits in all directions at once, and this is its main strength.